Today we will be talking about attachment disorders in adults. My name is Porch, and I will be presenting with Tammy, Matt, and Jeff Sheley, with significant contributions by Maggie, Hubburd. The early work regarding attachment disorders was done by John Bowlby and Mary Ainsworth, and attempted, quote, to explain the pervasiveness of human social bonds and reactions to their disruptions, end quote. Because patterns of attachment established in childhood may continue to affect an adult's developing sense of self, their strengths, and their capabilities, it is vitally important for clinicians to have a basic understanding of attachment theory. These patterns create the inner maps that chart our relationships throughout life, not only in terms of what we expect from others, but also in terms of how much comfort and pleasure we can experience in their presence. Although the initial research into this topic focused on how infants develop attachments, the interest in attachment theory and research diversified in the late 1970s, with many theorists asking how early attachment might apply to human development over the lifespan. Researchers are now turning their attention to how childhood attachment experiences affect the lives of adults. Throughout this presentation, we will discuss the importance of attachment, the 4 categories of attachment, spiritual considerations for attachment, and implications for minority populations.
The formation of healthy, secure relational bonds is particularly pertinent to the early years of life. However, these issues, especially when left unresolved, can persist well into adolescence and adulthood and create significant problems in later years, especially in relationships. Adults who fail to secure healthy bonds with attachment figures in childhood often fear intimacy in close relationships, struggle to trust others, and may experience anxiety, depression, and other psychological symptoms as a result. Although the underlying issue may be decades old, treatment through various psychotherapy techniques can help alleviate the symptoms and equip adults to work towards healthy, fulfilling relationships. According to John Bowlby, the theory of attachment begins in the cradle and ends in the grave. Mr. Bowlby's attachment theory explored the process of how bonds of affection are formed and or broken, and the lasting effect this bond may have on an individual. In infancy, a child who is loved but not necessarily cared for is at risk of psychological and emotional peril. Love alone is not enough. Every child has a biological need to feel safe and secure in the hands of their caregiver, usually their mother. If a child's emotional needs are not met when they are young and vulnerable, then an internal framework is formed which serves as a basis for this child's relationship carrying forward into adulthood. Attachment theories can be classified in several ways. One can either be securely attached or insecurely attached. A secure attachment occurs when a bond between a child and a caregiver are of trust and protection. This secure attachment fosters an independence and serves as a platform for the infant to explore the world. And since attachment is the foundation for social learning, a securely attached child is likely to become an adult who has a positive relationship with others. They also have confidence to explore and master their environment. An attachment which is classified as insecure may be insecure avoidant, insecure anxious, or disorganized. Those who are classified as insecure avoidant usually seek isolation and are pseudo-independent. They may be emotionally distant, selfish, and shut down. They usually exemplify an I don't care attitude. Fear of being abandoned is the primary fear of the insecure avoidant, while at the same time, he or she may also struggle with intimacy. Adults who are classified as insecure anxious tend to be emotionally hungry, needy, and even clingy. They tend to interpret the actions as their partners as unloving, and then become more clingy and less trusting. They do not have a strong sense of self and are usually dependent upon others for meeting their needs, but may complain of constant frustrations and feeling deprived. Those who've suffered from a disorganized, insecure attachment tend to have rocky relationships with many highs and lows. And for the most part, these relationships seem to be abusive and toxic, filled with emotional storms and unpredictable mood swings.
Addressing attachment theory through a spiritual lens may benefit a believing client working through these issues. From a Judeo-Christian perspective, the concept of the Trinity is foundational to their spiritual and emotional work. According to Maureen Miner, relationship with God is the primary attachment in the believer's life, and people relate with others because they are made in the relational image of God. Humans are intrinsically wired to seek out relationship with God. This begins with God's choice to make us in his image, with the capacity and inclination for relationship. The Christian belief in the Trinity, reflected in the three persons of God the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, implies that man is made to be relational because, quote, God essentially is a being in relation, end quote. The narrative of our disordered attachment to God and to others is told in Genesis 3. This story relates how our relational peace and communion with God, our attachment to him, was ruptured and torn apart by sin. From this point forward, we lack a secure attachment to the God who made us for peace and communion with himself and others. It is only through the work of Jesus Christ on the cross that we are able to enter into restored relationship with God and again experience secure attachment with him. The importance of this framework cannot be overstated, especially for adults that experienced insecure attachment as children with their human caregivers. A salvation relationship with their Father in heaven offers the possibility of a new and secure attachment style, maybe for the first time in their lives. Through this relationship, they can feel the truth of the meaning of Emmanuel, God with us. Healing of insecure attachment styles is possible through this divine human relationship.
Current research of attachment disorders in adults presents sobering insights into the pervasive nature of the relational dynamics stemming from childhood, as these issues can continually impact negative relationships throughout life. But the research also offers hopes that adults can and do recover and heal, even when these underlying issues are not fully addressed until much later in life. Problems with attachments in adults often materialize as other symptoms, including anxiety, depression, low self-esteem, social withdrawal, difficulties in establishing and maintaining close relationships, or wholly avoiding close relationships. By carefully examining the client's history, the therapist can reveal the underlying issues stemming from a failure to establish healthy, secure attachments in childhood. Working with clients struggling with attachment issues also presents unique problems for the therapist, as the client may be completely detached from their emotions. A helpful starting point in such scenarios is for the therapist to focus the initial work on increasing the client's emotional awareness and functioning as a guide for this process. Another useful therapeutic approach for treating attachment disorders in adults is group therapy, which can provide a safe environment for the client to explore feelings, express emotions, experience compassion, and receive positive encouragement in a supportive environment.
The interest in adult attachment didn't begin to evolve until the 1980s, when researchers began to seriously question how attachment processes play out in adulthood. However, today there is still a limited amount of information supporting theories of adult attachment as it relates to issues of religion, ethnicity, and cultural influences. Failure to consider these factors would seem to limit the relevant outcomes in relation to minority and underserved populations. McKenna proposes a debate whether classical attachment theory, largely based on research of Western Caucasian populations, is reflected consistently in all cultures. Many cultures hold different social values and implement particular ethnic parenting practices that are reflective of cultural norms and social expectations, which can in turn impact attachment style affecting the individual into adulthood. In Eastern collectivist societies, there's a positive correlation to observed attachment anxiety and attachment avoidance because emotional dependence is discouraged in these cultures. While Western culture values a close emotional bond even in adulthood, this may be seen as disruptive to family structure in Eastern cultures. Maltreatment and abuse in childhood is another issue affecting adult attachment. Poor parenting, or the lack of parenting altogether, generally results in disorganized, avoidant, or ambivalent attachment styles, which in turn can lead to poor romantic relationships, high rates of unemployment, and potential domestic abuse in adulthood, as well as increased incidence of depression, anxiety, and even physical health problems. Though these issues are not necessarily specific to minorities, those with a lower socioeconomic status are at a greater risk of experiencing these attachment issues due to financial stress, lack of positive social interaction, and an inability to access community resources such as childcare and mental health. Children in high SES families have more available resources, a wider range of experiences and social interactions, and the parents are more likely to be educated in child-rearing practices than children from a low SES environment. Research clearly shows a positive correlation to maltreatment in childhood and increased use of drugs and alcohol in adulthood. He suggests that dependence on drugs and alcohol may result from an inability to maintain supportive relationships and a means to cope with deficiencies in intimacy, perhaps especially for those who find it difficult to establish emotional regulating attachments. When correlated to higher rates of child maltreatment along with drug and alcohol use in low SES families, research would appear to support a higher rate of insecure attachment styles in adults of minority and low SES population. So as we bring our discussion on adult attachment disorders to a conclusion, we can see that attachment is a lifelong dynamic concept. The lasting impact of the attachments formed in infancy and childhood underscore their importance, as well as point to God's design for deep and meaningful connection through relationships. The wounds of early life can cause long-lasting and severe psychological and emotional damage. However, change is possible. Current research indicates adults can gain the relational skills needed to enjoy healthy relationships. However, future research is needed to fully understand the impact that childhood attachment has on adult psychosocial and relationship development. Specific research examining attachment disorders in adults in minority populations and research focusing on specific age groups of adults could offer more useful insight into this topic. Further study regarding the effectiveness of spiritual growth and connection to God in building secure attachment relationships in adults could yield additional treatment methods. Treatment through a skilled counselor and the positive experience of healthy relationships offer considerable hope for change, growth, and healing from attachment disorders at any age. We thank you for watching our presentation and hope you've learned something about adult attachment disorders. Thank you.